Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, where Dwayne Johnson's agent is busy capitalizing on all that Jumanji cold hard cash. Yes, it's a similar tactic that was used by Dwayne Johnson's team post San Andreas, saying, look at what a big star Dwayne Johnson is. Let's get these other projects moving forward. And in fact, both of today's first two stories are about Dwayne Johnson movies that are indeed moving forward. In fact, his payday has hit a new high. And I think there's an argument that he deserves it because Jumanji is almost 900 million worldwide. Jumanji! Although with all these projects quickly filling up his dance card, one has to wonder what the heck's going to happen with Jumanji 2. They are close to a deal to have the writers return, but still, will Dwayne Johnson have time to film it to hit that 2019 release date where Sony is rumored to want to pit it against Star Wars once again? Also, before we get into the Dwayne Johnson news, one has to wonder, where is the Kevin Hart, Jack Black, or Karen Gillan news, right? What's their management team up to? Why are they asleep at the wheel? They've, I think, contributed to that 900 million, and so they should be getting at least something, as Dwayne Johnson seems to be getting everything. All right, so the first story, and I'm curious, do you think this, because we've talked about the fact that Dwayne Johnson is kind of overexposed, and I think one of the reasons Jumanji worked was that he was diluted with three other actors. I think that's one of the reasons he works so well on the Fast and Furious films, because he's part of a group. So, and one of these is a Fast and Furious story, although they've significantly pared down the group to just two. But I'm curious if you think this, if this is a good move for Dwayne Johnson. But this is the way Hollywood works. He's so hot off of Jumanji that his management team is able to push these projects through because the studios go, that's a lot of money, and he is the biggest star associated with it and has the only one with movies that have come even close in the past to getting that much money, so it must be Dwayne Johnson. And then, by the time anyone finds out that it's maybe not, or, a little bit of Dwayne Johnson goes a long way, he's already got his money. And the cycle starts all over again because of just one of these hits. He does another situation like he did post San Andreas and now post Jumanji. He just does it again. It's very clever. He has an excellent management team. So let's talk about what they've done for him this past week. All right, so Red Notice sparked a bidding war. I can't believe it. We'll talk about why in just a moment, but it ended up at Universal and Legendary. Legendary will produce and finance, although Legendary, of course, has put out some real clunkers as of late, so I don't know if I'd want them anywhere near my movie. But they're willing to pay quite a bit of money, as you'll see. So anyway, everybody wanted this project from Dwayne Johnson and Rawson Thurber, the team behind not just Central Intelligence, but what pushed this over the edge last week was the Skyscraper trailer. Seriously? Everybody was lampooning that on Twitter about how it was Die Hard. So it just goes to show you how little executives at the studios are keyed into what the general public is saying. Or they just don't believe it. But I'm surprised that the strength of Skyscraper would get anyone to pony up any cash. I'd be like, I don't know. And Rawson Thurber, just like with Skyscraper, this guy, he's a genius. He's writing himself into all these deals because he's the writer and the director. So he's coming up with these big high concept ideas. I liked Central Intelligence, but it wasn't a big picture. It wasn't, a blockbuster, I'd say. It was a good, fun, middle of the road action comedy. But I think we have yet to see if he can deliver at the level of a Jumanji or a San Andreas. But he's certainly going around town like he can. And so he becomes integral to these projects because he writes them and Dwayne Johnson's backing him, so he gets to direct them. And he's getting a huge payday as well. So anyway, this is another action comedy, and Red Notice is the name of it, and that's an Interpol term for like the worst notice you can get, right? They're like, oh, this is serious. It's a red notice. And it's a globe-trotting heist thriller where Dwayne Johnson will star as an Interpol agent and who's trying to take down, obviously, someone who's a globe-trotting thief. And it's supposed to be for 2 stars, and they haven't selected the other star yet. And I think that'll either be someone who he teams with or perhaps who he's chasing. I'm curious to see how the project shapes up. I hope it's who he's chasing. I think that would be a little bit more interesting. Now, Thurber has just the outline. They went around pitching the idea of how the movie would progress, and he's only going to start writing it now that the deal is done. And that's often the way it's done in Hollywood. So for those of you who are interested in a career behind the camera, just know that once you've proven yourself to even a little bit of a degree, or you've hooked up with a major star like Dwayne Johnson, you don't have to even write the full script to get a deal. You just have to have the basic plot points. So he's going to write it now, and he's getting $10 million to do that, to write and direct. Even though I think he has not proven himself yet. I can't believe he got $10 million. He's so smart to get it before Skyscraper opens. Maybe Skyscraper will be amazing, but that first trailer was not encouraging. And then here's the really big story. Dwayne Johnson is getting north of, this is the rumor, of $20 million. That is a huge milestone, not just for him, but for Hollywood, because that is a deal that is rarely handed out these days. Usually, if a star is going to make a lot of money, they have to do it through a back-end deal. Jennifer Lawrence recently got $20 million, although I don't think she has any of those paydays in her future after the way Passengers ended up performing. But, that was a huge deal when she got that. And then for the most part, the only people who can get $20 million are like Robert Downey Jr. for Iron Man or Matt Damon for Bourne. Once they've proven themselves in the role, no less. This is for the first film, and maybe it'll be a franchise, but he's getting $20 million. Guaranteed! The movie doesn't have to do well because there's no back-end worked in there. Although sometimes, like Robert Downey Jr. and also Harrison Ford did this for the last Indiana Jones, well, they're making another one, but the last one they put out, you get the $20 million plus back end, especially because in those cases you can't make the movie without the star, and the management team knows that. So that's how they walk away with like $60 million from the picture, because they not only get the $20 million up front, but they get substantial back end. So it's amazing. And of course, their management team gets a percentage of that, well deserved. So that's how Red Notice is shaping up. I'm curious. I don't know. It seems like Central Intelligence to me to some degree, which again, I enjoyed, but it was not something that performed at the level of Jumanji. All right, so that's the first story of the day. Now, the other project that's coming together for Dwayne Johnson is that Fast and Furious spinoff. And it's interesting because we have someone else whose career is getting momentum, and that's David Leitch. Now, he, of course, came to fame co-directing John Wick, but then he and Chad Stahelski infamously split, and Chad has stayed with the John Wick franchise and I think done an amazing job, but he's not leaving that franchise. He's going to do the third film, and it's weird because he did such a good job on 2. You'd think he'd use that as a jumping off point to take himself to the next level, but he's not. I guess he and Keanu are super friends, but anyway, David Leitch is having a more aggressive career. Now, at first, that kind of didn't work out with Atomic Blonde because the movie didn't do well at the box office. So it was like, eh. But luckily, Leitch, before Atomic Blonde came out, had already signed on for Deadpool 2. So David Leitch has a different business plan. This is something that also I'm sure Dwayne Johnson did at the beginning of his career, but David Leitch's early days. So what he has to do is get his projects before the movie comes out. I guess to some degree, Dwayne Johnson is racing Skyscraper as well. But Dwayne Johnson is coming off of a successful project with Jumanji, whereas David Leitch has a successful project coming up. And before we find out if he can do as good a job as Tim Miller with the action sequences in Deadpool, which are very distinct, he's going to get himself another gig, which is very smart. He won't get as much money if it had been after, but I think maybe David Leitch knows something we don't. But anyway, David Leitch and his team are getting him the directing gig on the new Fast and Furious spinoff, which features Dwayne Johnson and Jason Statham. I think that is a fabulous match because I think that the fight sequences, like I'm not so sure how David Leitch is stylistically, but I thought the fight sequences in Atomic Blonde were particularly well staged, especially that stairway fight. Well, they went to a lot of different places in just the stairway, but that's how it's, I think, known. And it was really good. So I think that to put him with Dwayne Johnson and Jason Statham, particularly Statham, who's such a good fighter, I think that's really good pairing. Chris Morgan will script. He scripted almost all of the Fast and Furious movies, so it will certainly fit with the brand. I'm curious to see how Fast and Furious works out. Poor Tyrese, right? He's been crying about this. We'll see how it works out without Vin Diesel and the rest of the crew. But I think that Dwayne Johnson and Jason Statham are going to be a tough combo to pass up, especially with David Leitch behind the camera. What did Vin Diesel do to annoy everybody so much that they actually took his billion-dollar franchise away from him? All right, so that's the second story of the day. Now, the third story, speaking of interesting turns that a career can take, Elizabeth Olsen is, of course, part of the MCU, but it hasn't done that much for her. So she's taking an interesting gamble on streaming television, but at a very interesting place, Facebook. She has a show that she was developing originally. She's an executive producer as well as set to star for Showtime. Didn't work out there, so she's going to take it to Facebook and try and be a big fish in a small pond in terms of when it comes to original content. Facebook is trying to make their mark there, and Elizabeth Olsen is certainly a big get for them and probably will be of more value to Facebook than she would have been to Showtime. So what happened here, and the way Facebook rewarded her, is that they gave her a direct, straight-to-series order for 10 episodes for the first season. And that means it doesn't need to be piloted or tested. They're definitely going to air the first season. And you can see that's a big advantage because Showtime opted not to move ahead with the project because they did not have a straight-to-series order. So Elizabeth Olsen, the rumor is that she's going to be playing a young widow putting her life back together. And interestingly enough, YouTube Red apparently has a show also about a young widow that's being developed, so the two series could go head to head. But I'm curious, can you see yourself watching a half-hour drama on Facebook? It's such a different space, and I think like news and to some degree fake news have kind of taken it over. It's a little bit like Twitter. Could you see yourself watching original content on Twitter? I think Facebook is more about interaction than a passive watching experience. But we'll see. I'm also curious how autoplay is going to factor into this, because autoplay, I think, is something that Facebook does to falsely boost viewership. I've seen a lot of trailers do huge numbers on Facebook because because what I assume is autoplay, like numbers that are ridiculous. And I think it's just because whenever it shows up in someone's timeline, it plays. They don't have to click on it like they do on other services. So that's what boosts those numbers. So if Facebook puts Elizabeth Olsen on autoplay, it seemed like a lot of people are watching that show. They might have turned autoplay off. Of course, there were some really bad situations where people posted killings and horrible things on Facebook, and before they were taken down by Facebook, some people unfortunately witnessed them because of the autoplay feature. Maybe you have to turn it off, so it's on you, but I think it could really change the Facebook experience to have this kind of content on there. And for those, I'm more of a Twitter person, but for those of you who are really into Facebook, I'm curious, how do you see this changing your experience on the site? All right, so those are the three stories of the day. Now, the viewer question comes from Zachary Feel. And Zachary says, "Hey, Grace, business-related viewer question. We've talked a lot about streaming services lately, and so Zachary has something about that. So he says, how does content on streaming services generate any money? On Movie Math, every week you talk about box office profit and always mention the vast amounts of revenue to me made from iTunes and Blu-ray sales. But how does content made, and that has a price point, you're paying, per sale. But Zach says, but how does content made for or directly sent to Netflix, Amazon, or Hulu generate any money when not released on those platforms? By the way, Hulu will release its shows eventually on iTunes, so those do get a price point. But Netflix and Amazon, of course, keep their content on their streaming sites. I think because Hulu is small, there might come a day that Hulu stops doing that, but right now I think they just want to get the viewers. So that when the second season comes on, it's a little like the CW putting Riverdale on Netflix. So when the second season comes around, your audience has grown, and they all tune in to the content source for the new material. But anyway, Zachary says, I know services pay for rights to the content, but are there more dollars to be made with really successful properties? Would love your thoughts. Thanks for the great videos. P.S. Here's my emoji review of my question. Hilarious. Great question, Zach. So you're right. When it's a movie, like movie tickets, or if it's something that's on iTunes, you're paying a price point, per person for the viewing experience, right? And then also if it's television, there's ads. Although more and more, a huge source of revenue is when it goes to iTunes, the episode the next day, etc. That's how you're making a lot of money. But the way subscription services make money, and this is the HBO model originally, but of course Netflix has been a real game changer. But HBO has created their own kind of streaming service too with HBO Now. You don't have to have cable to get it. But the name of the game is volume in terms of subscribers. So you want to have people who are every month paying you to watch your content. And that can, if you have hundreds of millions of subscribers, it can generate billions of dollars of revenue, as we're seeing with Netflix. Because they have so many subscribers, they can keep their price point down. I think it's like $11 now for a month, and that's pretty good. That's cheaper than a movie ticket in most cities, and that's for endless content all month long, whereas that's just one viewing experience with a movie. It's a little bit like MoviePass is trying to turn going to the movies into this kind of service as well, a subscription-based service. So what you want to do is you want to have a volume game. For instance, far more people are subscribed to Netflix than go and see even the biggest movies, right? With the exception maybe of Star Wars: The Last Jedi. It's fascinating how few people actually see movies in theaters compared to how many people are on the planet Earth and could go. That's why sometimes movies can shoot up so high so quickly, like Jumanji, because it just gets so many people to go to the movies who usually don't. But people are much more open to subscribe to Netflix, which comes to their home and on their device, their phone, their tablet. I think people feel they're getting more money's worth. So way more people subscribe to Netflix every month than go to the movies every month. So that's the name of the game. Let's just use Netflix as the example. They want to have a volume of subscribers who pay every month. So why do they have to have original content? Well, they have original content to make sure these subscribers stay subscribed, especially as more and more competition comes on the scene. The Disney streaming service, the DC streaming service, Amazon, Hulu. Netflix wants to make sure that you feel you can't drop your Netflix subscription. So they want to have constant content coming out every month. That's not only to keep you as a subscriber and to entice new subscribers to come on, but also to make sure that you don't ride the wave. A number of you have said you do this, and that's where you'll unsubscribe if something's not on. There's nothing coming out this month that I want to watch. I'm going to unsubscribe and I'll resubscribe when something comes on that I'm interested in. Netflix doesn't want you to do that. Maybe you'll forget to resubscribe. So what they do is they make sure that they have something for you every month to keep you locked in. And also they have surprises like Cloverfield. They're like, you could cancel your subscription, but you're just going to have to renew it because we're going to have something amazing that comes out of nowhere at the last minute. So that's another part of the business plan. Now, the reason they want original content is because not only they want to entice you to tune in, that's what everybody wants these days, this exciting, edge of the envelope, expensive content, which now streaming services are known for. You've got to have your original shows. But also, there's no fee for them to license it from somebody else. It's theirs, so they don't have to license it or share any of the revenue with those. Although often Netflix, because Netflix doesn't release viewership numbers, they just pay huge sums of money up front. Now, nobody knows if they're like cheating everyone and getting a ton of money in the back end that's nowhere near what they're paying up front, even though it seems like a lot. And maybe someday they'll have to reveal those numbers. But right now, Netflix pays everything up front because they don't want anyone to know how much people are actually watching their content, because it'll eventually get out if you give it to the agencies, etc. So if they have their own content, there's no upfront fee, and also they don't have to worry about that content being taken away. I'm sure they live in constant fear of Disney taking the Marvel shows off of their site, right? They lost a ton of other people's content after early days when people, as we've discussed last week, said, oh my gosh, you can make a ton of money streaming stuff. Why am I giving it to you? They have a lot of Disney content, and they're going to lose all of that, not the Marvel Netflix shows for now, but all the Disney movies that are on the service are going to be pulled off and put on Disney streaming. So Netflix doesn't want that to happen. So they want, it's a security situation where if it's their stuff, it's never going to go away. It'll always live on the site and be a reason to subscribe, to go back and watch those other seasons, maybe before the new one debuts, etc. So anyway, that's the answer to your question, Zachary. I hope that explains it to you a little bit better. Thank you, everybody. Also, I've not been curious to hear what you think of that business model. But what do you think about how it applies to MoviePass, and also which streaming services are you currently subscribed to, and do you stay subscribed? Do you ride the wave, etc., etc. All right, so that's today's morning movie news. Please write down below what you think today's top 3 stories, Zach's viewer question, anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, and of course, any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.